Goeiedag! Good day, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world.
I've been looking around for salvation. I've been looking around for the truth. All around me I see frustration, and I looked all over till I found you. I sit and listen to your stories, and you're telling me, please don't worry. So lot in this world you should know, and love in life is where you should go. If you're looking for somewhere to go, if you're looking for someone to know, if you're looking for someone to guide you, then love in life will guide you. I know that life outside is so...
Koinant, good evening, fellow South Africans and citizens of the world. I just got that finger in, didn't I? Well, tonight we have a very different discussion. We're going to be talking to Michael Southwood, who established the Unity Group. Its aim is to set up an economic governance system for South Africa and to use the funds to assist in getting to the majority of our population, to educate and help them to understand what their rights and responsibilities as South Africans are. Please remember to subscribe to be kept informed. And now, let's get Michael on. Sorry guys, I've just got some information that's relevant to this discussion I'm posting right now. Here we go, I'm getting Michael now. Hi Michael.
Hi Scott, can you see me?
Not yet, no. I see your icon. Don't worry, this is good. There we are, now I see you. That's much better. Wow, you got a lot of power behind you, haven't you?
Got a lot of?
Power behind you.
Yeah, I know, that's the power box.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
I'm attempting to get rid of it.
I was just being a bit facetious. Now, Michael, isn't it interesting when municipalities fail, they effectively go under business administration by unelected officials. And when states like South Africa fail, they fall in a huge heap like Zimbabwe has. Now, you've got a new, completely new organization that you've established, but before we go into that, please give us a bit of background on yourself and how you came up with the concept you are now developing.
Okay. Scott, am I meant to see you? Because I can't.
No, you won't see me because my streaming software steals my camera. But you can hear me.
All right, no problem at all. Scott, it's a long story, obviously, but I'm going to keep it as brief as possible. You know, I have quite a long history in business in various sectors, as well as Christian ministry and various things in the past. I don't necessarily adhere to any religion any longer. I think I prefer to think of myself as being a spiritual person. The concept of setting up an economic system of governance came to me about 6 years ago, while on a retreat in the bush. And I was quite surprised that it had come to me, because I have really very little interest in this type of enterprise. I'm not interested in managing countries or doing anything like that at all. However, I feel that I perhaps was just a receptacle or receptive to receive this understanding, and possibly to bring it into being, and to then find the right people to do the job itself. I don't necessarily think of myself as the person to do the job, but more as the person to get the ball rolling, so to speak.
Right. Now, what you've just said is very, very interesting. I'm talking about how you said you don't see yourself as the right person to do the job, but you are hoping that those sort of people will come by and they can actually take the project forward. Now, I think a lot of people who start organizations are really good at administering or establishing those sort of things, but when it comes to actually facilitating them or actually making them work, they're probably the worst possible people to do that, because of maybe they don't have the right personality. And I think what you've just said to now is very, very important, because I know there's some groups in South Africa where people who've established the organization don't realize that it's time for them to get other people in to actually take it on and make it work. And I think that does a lot of damage to their cause. So I applaud you for that.
Yeah. Well, you see, I think a case in point, Scott, and I don't see myself as the type of person I'm about to describe, but the ANC guys who managed to bring an end to apartheid one way or another, I believe that was their job. Their job wasn't to manage the country; it was merely to bring an end to apartheid, but then to find the right people to do the job. Unfortunately, like people like Che Guevara, who was in Cuba and messed things up perfectly over there. That type of personality doesn't necessarily need to run a country. They're good at getting the administration to change, but to actually do the job in running the country, they're the worst people possible, because
exactly.
They get involved in greed and all of that kind of thing. Yeah. I don't think I necessarily have that type of personality, but I also don't necessarily have that type of desire, to do the job. However, if I am called upon to get more involved, I'm obviously available to do that, but I'm not looking for a job at this stage.
Right. Yeah. Well, the old phrase, you can't be a jack of all trades, comes to mind. Now, let's move on. When did you establish the Unity Group?
Well, the Unity Group was really established as a Facebook page in 2017, the beginning of 2017. Right. The understanding of the system was really given to me probably in about 2015. So it's information that I've had for a long time, but never really felt to do anything with. I found myself back in London in June or April of last year, and sort of towards the end of December of this year, I suddenly had the feeling that there was some movement, and the time was coming to actually start looking at the Unity Group concept as being a viable concept of management for South Africa.
Right.
And then very shortly after that, the whole coronavirus thing broke out in Wuhan. So the stage was set for me to come back from England back to South Africa, and I arrived here literally on the 17th of March.
Wow.
The 18th of March, all the airports were closed. So I was on the third last flight out of Heathrow to come back. So the timing seemed to be quite perfect, I think.
Okay. Now, has what you're proposing ever been tried before for a country?
I believe not. I know that there are a few countries that work more or less in that direction. But, it's quite hard, it's not that easy to keep the human element out of it. And I know that Singapore works more or less to that system, but there's a bit of a dictatorship going on there as well, I think. So it isn't a pure structure of people management, which is ultimately what we're talking about. We're talking about the people managing the country and the people actually employing the leaders.
Right.
So the leaders are directly accountable to the people. So it's a completely different system.
Which brings us to the situation in South Africa, where what you've got is a bunch of gangsters who are looting the country. What are your views on what's happening in South Africa today?
Well, look, I mean, they are gangsters. You're not wrong in saying that at all, Scott. These chaps are gangsters completely, and they've been borrowing money left, right, and centre to feed their gangsterism and to feed their lust for greed and for more wealth and power, obviously, as well. But ultimately, they will end up losing this power because they've been selling out. So they certainly are guilty of gangsterism and they are criminal. They've been keeping the South African population locked down, where this lockdown really has been completely unnecessary in South Africa. It appears that South Africans are almost partly immune to this virus. There's very few people that are actually getting it, and the government has been overinflating the figures, to take control in various parts of the country and to keep the people locked down, and obviously also to get the kickbacks from the World Health Organization, who are paying them for every person that tests positive, and for every person that dies of the virus, they get paid even more. So there are agendas at play here, So, yeah, these are gangsters in the nth degree.
Yeah. Now, I actually heard of a case. This is unsubstantiated, but I can believe it. I heard of a case in the United States of America where someone was arrested for murder for shooting another man, but when it went to trial, or when he went before the courts, his defense was that I couldn't have been the murderer because on his death certificate it said that he died from COVID-19. That's the incredible situation that apparently actually happened in the USA. Now, okay.
It's happening here too. People are actually being paid to allow the medical staff to put COVID-19 as a cause of death, whereas people have died of something completely different. So that's happening here a lot, and I've heard of it, from friends of mine, people that I know personally, have had this situation, and have been offered money, to allow the person that has died of something else, to say it's COVID. So it is happening here.
Who does the money go to from the World Health Organization?
We don't know exactly, but it seems to be coming through the health ministry in South Africa, and we don't know how they're dividing that money out, because it doesn't appear to be going back into the system. So it doesn't seem to be. No one seems to be benefiting from it. In other words,
so it's another rort.
It's more money that's just been stolen, really.
Right. Okay. Now, when we look at South Africa, and we look at how the ANC are working with this, what's it called? The National Democratic, what's the last word? This NDR, which is the South African Communist Party memorandum on where they want to take South Africa, which is, as we're looking at, really into communism. That brings us to the point: is there a Chinese communist agenda in South Africa?
Look, there's been a communist Chinese agenda in Africa for a very long time. China had stated it categorically many, many years ago that they will take over Africa without firing a single shot. And they are doing it very, very carefully and very cleverly. Countries like Mozambique, Zambia, Zimbabwe, Kenya, Malawi, well, not Kenya as much, but certainly Malawi, Tanzania, have got an incredibly strong Chinese presence. Yeah. And, Mozambique, for one, has sold out their mineral rights, they've sold out their forestry rights, and their fishing rights completely to China. So China owned those rights already. And it's just a matter of time before they start starving out the people, because they come into a country, they put very little into the local community as such, and then just take as much as they can out of it. Now that agenda is very, very strong in South Africa. We believe that the government, the South African government, are in debt to the tune of about 2 trillion rand to the Chinese directly. Now, this is money that they've just been borrowing to sort things out in the country, but of course they haven't been sorting anything out. They've just been squirreling that money away in their offshore accounts and buying properties overseas. And we know that this is a fact. This isn't a thumbs up. We know that they are doing this. So these are facts. And obviously the Chinese want land. I mean, we've seen Chinese members of parliament here in South Africa. We've seen Chinese military. We've seen Chinese police in South Africa. We've seen whole towns that are only Chinese. There's nobody else there. So they've built entire towns for themselves. And it's really just a matter of time before they start shipping millions of Chinese over here and start taking over the country completely. And this is communism, and these people are not interested in your religious beliefs, and we know absolutely that Chinese people hate black people.
Yeah, they do.
And they will want to eradicate them as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
So, one of the other agendas that we're looking at are the farm murders, and, people have been saying that this is black against white. This has absolutely nothing to do with black against white. This is another agenda to break down the food chain. So it's to create fear amongst those who are farming and who are growing the wheat and the maize and whatever else that is feeding the people, so that the food chain will break down. And we believe that this is also fueled by the Chinese as well.
Okay, so what you're saying is these organized thugs, because they're clearly organized. I mean, they this isn't just like a household robbery. They've had training. You're suggesting that the training by these thugs comes from some Chinese players. Is that right?
Possibly amongst others, but I think they're probably the largest player in this thing at the moment. I think the Chinese, they've had this agenda for ages. They want South Africa. South Africa is incredibly rich in minerals. It's incredibly rich in forestry, fishing, farming, agriculture. It's ripe for the picking, and the current government has no idea what to do. I mean, they have no idea of how to grow an economy. They have no idea how to build, and so. Their only recourse right now is to sell out and jump ship. Jacob Zuma has already jumped ship. He's left the country. He's away in Dubai right now, and he's got no intention of coming back. And we believe that our current president has plans to do exactly the same thing.
Okay, there's so many questions I have for you here. I mean, okay, talking about Jacob Zuma first. That's a quick one. Where did you hear that he's actually gone overseas?
Well, it's one of our sources, and we have a number of them.
How does he do that? Because there's no international flight.
Well, Emirates have been flying, all along. Emirates have flown all the way through the lockdown, so there have been flights coming in and out all along. So it hasn't been a total lockdown. And I mean, obviously, if you're at that level of clearance, you can get a private flight out of the country, so that shouldn't be too difficult for somebody like Jacob Zuma to do. And whether he flew with Emirates or not, we don't know, and we can't substantiate that. But we know that he possibly got a private plane to take him.
Okay. Now, I want to go back to this Chinese issue. And what you're suggesting, and this is the first I've ever heard of this, is that these organized gangs that go in and commit farm murders and farm attacks to try and intimidate the farmers are actually being trained by the Chinese. Now, I have heard from a lot of people the suggestion that who's behind these gangs are the ANC and the EFF, the actual political party. Now, what could hypothetically be the situation is that they are working with the Chinese to actually do this. Is this what you're thinking?
No. That is absolutely the case. That is absolutely the case, and possibly not so much the ANC, but perhaps possibly the other party,
like EFF.
Exactly. Yes. So it seems to me that they're being paid to do this because, they're going into these farms, they're breaking into the farms, they're killing people, but they're not actually stealing anything. So they're going in there only to kill. So there's no agenda to steal. So obviously these guys have enough money. They don't need to steal. So they're being paid. We put two and two together.
Right.
They're being paid to do these jobs.
It's like a hit job.
Absolutely it is. Yeah. And it's to intimidate. It's to create fear and intimidation. And this is the way communism works.
Yeah.
It's to intimidate and create fear and to divide. And once you have that perfectly in place, you can then start manipulating the people. And these mask agendas and the curfews and taking away alcohol and cigarettes, these are all mind games. These are ways to intimidate people, to control them, to manipulate them, and to force them to do ridiculous things, so that when they do come up with suggestions at a later stage or laws at a later stage which are even more ridiculous, people will accept them a lot easier.
Yeah.
And I mean, right now we're faced with a situation where they've allowed people to buy cigarettes and alcohol again because they took those away. But this will be short-lived. It may only last a few weeks, and then they'll stop it again. And it's this constant playing with people's emotions is the way to intimidate them and control them, and the way communism works. That's absolutely a communist agenda.
Well, the point I'd like to make to you is that Dlamini Zuma hasn't got the intellect to bake a pie, let alone think through this sort of situation. So who's actually advising her what to do to create this intimidation, like banning cigarettes and banning alcohol? Who's behind this? Is it the Open Society Foundation, like George Soros, who appears to have his claws into everything?
Well, look, I mean, let's not be unfair. I mean, I don't think Dlamini Zuma is a complete idiot. I mean, let's not be totally unfair on that count. I don't think she's.
I think I disagree on that. Anyway, carry on.
Look, I don't think she'd be in that position if she was a complete idiot. I mean, I don't think she's incredibly bright, for one thing. But I don't think she's a complete fool. She's obviously playing to some sort of an agenda, and I personally, I don't say that this is the common knowledge, but I personally believe that this has also got something to do with the Chinese manipulation. I mean, if they are in debt to the tune of 2 trillion, then they must be taking this from somebody. So World Health Organization is certainly one of them, and I believe the Chinese are certainly another one of them. And obviously World Bank too, because there's been quite a lot of money being borrowed from the World Bank as well. So there are players there. So they are definitely taking orders from somebody, because they wouldn't have worked the strategy out on their own. You're right about that, for sure.
Yeah. Now, that takes us back to the debt trap, which you spoke about earlier. Can you just explain to people watching the live stream, what is the debt trap? How does it work? How does China capture countries and basically colonize them?
Right. Well, I mean, the situation in Africa is that you have leadership who have come out of perhaps revolutionary stages. So here we have revolutionaries. You have Jacob Zuma's and you have Ramaphosa's, and you have these guys who are revolutionaries and who've come into power as revolutionaries, not necessarily as statesmen and not as politicians, and certainly not as businessmen. So they've come into power not really knowing how to manage a country, and have ended up going into debt. They've ended up basically bankrupting the country because of mismanagement. Also because of perhaps importing more than they export, less manufacturing within the country, and obviously not growing the economy. So the country goes into a state of decline, really, financial decline.
Right.
They then start looking for alternatives to buoy the economy back up and to perhaps rescue the economy. And so instead of finding ways to make the money within the country, because they don't have that skill set, they would rather go and borrow money with the hope that somewhere along the line someone will rescue them, or a plan will come together that they can then pay that money back. They, in the beginning, don't really think that they're going to be borrowing that money without paying it back. They think that that they will be able to pay it back, but then they find themselves in so much debt that paying it back is no longer an option. And the international or whoever is lending the money to them will then offer them a way out and say, well, it doesn't matter. If you can't pay it back, it's okay. We're quite happy to take, a mine or two, or, some other, government-run company, or whatever the case may be, or your fishing rights, or, allow us to fish a bit more in your waters, or give us some of your forestry rights, or something like that. So that's really how state capture happens. And that is the situation we're in at the moment in South Africa. We have been captured completely by China. They are just not that visible yet on our streets. But the time is coming, and it's very, very soon that we're going to be seeing a lot more of them.
Yeah. Now, just to confirm what you're saying, in Kenya, the port of Mombasa, which is the major port in East Africa, is now owned by the Chinese because of debt.
Yeah.
You know, that's how the situation works. So what is the ANC doing to help or correct the situation? Are they doing anything?
They're incapable of doing anything. They're absolutely incapable of doing anything. So they've been offering things like food parcels to the poor. Now, these are little food parcels that perhaps have a value of maybe 80 Rand or 100 Rand at the most. And,
right.
There's very little in it. It's not really enough food for one person for more than 2 or 3 days. But they're giving a food parcel to a family, one food parcel per family.
Oh.
That should last them for a week, maybe even 2 weeks. So people have run out of food. I've heard stories of people literally eating grass now.
Yeah, I've heard that too. Yeah.
They're eating whatever they can find now because that's how bad it's got. The money that they have got from the Chinese and the World Bank, they've put away. That's in their own accounts. They have no intention of using it to help the country, and certainly not to help the poor. So they really are doing nothing, and they have no intention of doing anything at all, because they have sold out, and basically now they're just biding their time before they jump ship themselves. I mean, we've heard that Ramaphosa has been selling off some of his shares and looking at selling his properties and various other assets to leave the country. So we believe he'll be gone pretty soon too. So this is the situation we face with. They have no idea of how to fix the situation, none at all. And they are not doing anything to remedy the situation as well. I mean, we've lost probably more than 50% of our SMMEs, the small to medium-sized businesses in South Africa, are the backbone of any country. And we've lost them. We've lost probably 55, 60% of those businesses that have gone. I mean, we've got icons, businesses that have been here for hundreds of years, that are just gone. They're just destroyed.
It's tragic.
Family businesses have been there for 50, 80 years that have just disappeared overnight. So and there's no way of getting any help from this government at all. They're not offering any way of rescuing these companies, and they have no interest in doing it. They just don't.
What you're actually suggesting is quite frightening, because if the top brass of the ANC get on a plane and leave the country, you then have a power vacuum. Who's going to fill it? What do you see happening in that scenario? What will happen?
Well, look, I mean, we're not anticipating that happening, but if that did happen, there would be all-out war within the ANC. They would be at each other's throats overnight. It'll be a tug of war to see who could be the captain of the ship. And there's a big group of incompetent people who'd all want the job. So and they'd be at each other's throats. And that we are anticipating that kind of juggling around is going to be happening. And perhaps a few people may well get hurt in that tussle, but we don't necessarily anticipate that it's going to be as the result of anybody jumping ship. It's just because there is a power struggle going on right now within the ANC. And that's been going on probably for the last couple of months, because Ramaphosa is just a weak leader. He doesn't really have much of a backbone. So there is a tussle, and people are within the ANC are shuffling around trying to see who would take over from him. So that is going on at the moment.
I think Ramaphosa is just a figurehead, actually. I don't think he has any control at all about what's going on. Now, there's a subject I want to touch on here. We're going to get right into the unity group in a second, but I think just by having a look at the situation in South Africa first, we can see how your proposal fits in as a solution. Now, there are a lot of groups who've established basically secessionist movements, setting apart the Western Cape from the rest of South Africa. What are your views about secession as a solution if, for example, the ANC leadership fled the country? Think they would get away with it?
No, they definitely will not get away with it. And I think it's a silly idea. I think thinking of, Cape Exit and that type of thing, I think those are just silly ideas, and I think they're wasting their time. I had a conversation with one of the members of parliament, and I won't mention his name, but he said to me categorically, without me even bringing up the subject, he said to me, do not think that the Western Cape will ever become a country on its own. We will go to war before that happens. So there's just no chance of that happening. So, for them to be thinking that they can break a part of the country away, they're living in a dreamland. That's never ever going to happen. The country will, the government will sick the army on them as quickly as they can blink. They will do it. As far as we're concerned, at the unity group, we want to unite. We don't want to divide. So the Western Cape is a part of South Africa. South Africa is a part of Africa. And our purpose and our plan, as far as the unity group is concerned, is to grow and build South Africa, and from here to start growing and building other countries outside of South Africa and incorporate them within the unity group's mandate of economic governance, so as to build and grow Africa as a prosperous what would I say, group of countries, so to speak.
Yeah. Okay.
Ultimately,
just being the devil's advocate here. Just being the devil's advocate here. The army, it's a complete disgrace in South Africa. In fact, Ian Cameron, who was the safety and security man for AfriForum, he resigned recently from AfriForum, but he told me in an interview that I had on livestream that the most soldiers that the South African Defence Force could muster together in any sort of proper workable way was 3,000. Now, I know they've got 70,000 soldiers, but most of those soldiers are undisciplined. They don't know what to do. They would run when the first shot is fired. He's suggesting that there are only about 3,000 men on the ground who would actually be able to participate in a real war. That's not an army. That's a joke.
No, not at all. And he's not wrong in saying that at all. That is correct. However, there are quite a lot more troops on standby, and they can be called up very, very quickly. And this is something that these guys are not complete fools. They're quite aware of things, and so they have been putting people on standby, and we have seen troops being moved around. So yes, he's not wrong about the 3,000. That is correct. But there are quite a lot more, probably in the range of about 10 to 20,000 that can be called up at any time, and who are ready to be called up as well. So those things could happen. But apart from that, there's the Chinese. We mustn't forget that. And the ANC have no qualms whatsoever on calling on the Chinese to come and help them if they need to, which would obviously spark a whole nother problem.
Right.
But that is an option, I think.
Right, okay. We'll get to that in a second. I just want to address people who are watching. We've got about 300 people watching at the moment. If you've got questions you'd like to put to Michael, please just put them in the side chat. And for those who are new to the Loving Life channel, please remember to subscribe to be kept informed. Okay, now, if the Chinese got involved in a military sense, that would bring in the USA straight away, because they've got a huge amount of assets in South Africa as well. That would create a war in the country. You think China would dare do that?
I don't think China would be that unwise, to tell you the truth, because they wouldn't be that unwise to do that. So I don't think that is a real possibility, to be fair.
That they would attack anyone in South Africa militarily.
I don't think they would do it in a hurry. I don't think they would do it in a hurry, because I think there are other countries that are watching very carefully as to what's going on in South Africa right now.
Well, the US have got a big base in Botswana, and they've been growing that base.
Yes, I believe that to be true. Yes.
Right. Okay. Now let's
and US very kind. The US are very kind towards South Africa. So
yeah, they are.
Them, and the UK and perhaps a few others. So There are options. So I think if China did do something like that, they understand that if they did something like that, there'd be repercussions, and I don't think that they are gamblers.
Right.
You know?
Okay. Now let's get back to the politics side. If I look at Ramaphosa and I look at the employment policies that the ANC have brought in, there's a huge amount of divisiveness that they seem to be fostering deliberately. What are your views on that?
Yeah. Well, I believe that that's part of the communist agenda. You know, that is the agenda that they had when they were putting the ANC together. You must remember that the ANC was largely trained in Russia. You know, so a lot of these guys were trained in communist countries. So they've been trained in communism. And so the communist agenda has been an agenda that's been in place long before, you know, the ANC came into power. I mean, this agenda has been in place from the 70s, 60s already.
Right.
You know, so this is part of it. So divide and conquer is very much a communist agenda. You know, they're using that strategy to weaken the resolve of the people, to turn the people literally into dogs, which is what they've done through the handouts and different things, which are also communist agendas. So this is all playing, you know, into that communist system that they're wanting to bring into this country.
Right. Okay. Now, in your view, you feel that protesting, and there are a lot of people who are protesting now, especially about the farm murders, will not have the desired effect. Do you think getting out there and protesting is just a waste of time?
It's a total waste of time. And I'll tell you why. Because if protesting was going to change the government, then I'd say it's a fantastic thing to do. But it won't. The only thing that protesting is going to do is it's going to show our weakness. It's not going to show our strength. So it's going to show a bunch of people, and largely middle class, which are these protests that are about to happen in the next few weeks, are largely middle class led. You know, a bunch of whingers are people who are unhappy with the situation, complaining, you know, and who's going to listen to complaining? I mean, these are revolutionaries that you're attempting to get the attention of. You know, they have no interest in your complaints. I mean, they've put you in that situation on purpose. You know, so they're not going to listen to you now and find a way to get you out of the situation that they put you into. So why are you protesting? I mean, what is the purpose of the protest? What are you hoping to achieve by the protest? And, you know, if you don't have a goal, then why are you doing it? I mean, are you just doing it to make a noise? Is it just, is it just an emotional response to what the government is doing? Because if that's all it is, then you're just wasting your time. You might as well just go home, you know. And for us, as part of End the Lockdown Mzansi, which is the main group that we run, right from the beginning, we said we would not get involved in any of these things. We would not get involved in court cases, in protests, in any of these things, because we know that this government has an agenda. It owns the courts, and there's no way that they're going to change their mind, because they're working according to a time scale, and they have to deliver at a certain time. You know, so, and they have masters, and they're working for their masters. And if you go and protest, no one's going to listen to you. You know, and if anything, they'll come and disrupt the protest just to show you how absolutely ridiculous you are.
Okay. Well, we had a big protest in Naboomspruit just a few days ago, and a huge turnout of farmers and local people supported that protest. I won't go into the details now. I had a live stream on that, went for 3.5 hours. Okay, so let's now turn our attention to your organization. I just wanted to get your views on a few things before we did. Now, the Unity Group has various proposals that it's putting forward for governance, and the first one is an economic system of governance. Tell us about that.
Well, Scott, the system of governance that I understand will work the best for a country like South Africa, because politics and politicians and the political system is a divisive system, especially in Africa, you know, where African people are. Yeah, you understand. And they find it far easier to work together than to work against each other. But politics has now put them against each other. And that is the way that they're ruling this country, they're ruling the people, by creating systems where they can put one Zulu against another Zulu, and that would never have happened before. But now with a system of economic governance, we do away with politicians and political parties altogether. The country is set up in a way as a company. I know South Africa is registered as a corporation already, but that is under the New World Order and all of that type of thing. But that's a completely different entity, where it will be a free market economy, where the people run the country themselves, and they employ leaders to do the management job. So they will employ a board of directors or a CEO, whatever the case may be, and then those people would be obviously responsible to one another, but they would be accountable mostly to the people. And the people would be able to hire and fire them as and when they are either performing badly, or if they're performing well, obviously they will stay. But it's a system of people management, really, where the people are managing the country, as opposed to where the leaders are managing the country. The leaders are dictating how the money should be allocated. I had a conversation with another political leader in South Africa, a white person, and she said to me, the definition of a politician is a person who decides what to do with the people's money. Now, in our estimate, the people should decide what to do with the people's money. We shouldn't be having people who are lording it over the people, deciding what to do with their money. And so the unity group system of governance is where the people decide whether money should be spent or not on a particular project, and if it should be spent, how best to spend it and who would benefit from it, and where everybody is earning a decent salary, but nobody is robbing the coffers as they are at the moment. So a country will be run profitably. It will be run, and that's where the business side of things comes in. It will be run like a business, but not necessarily as a business, but as a profitable entity. So the view and the target and the goal of the management staff of that country is to make it profitable. And that's what it's about. And at the moment, this country, and practically every country in Africa, is certainly not profitable.
Right. Now, look, it sounds like a fantastic concept, but how do you actually get it implemented? You've got to get people accepting and adopting it. You can't just bring in something that's so radically different to the Rainbow Nation's democracy. How are you going to get this to come in?
Well, obviously, we need to get people's buy-in on it. And, that is part of what I'm doing at the moment. I'm having meetings with people all over the country, and basically the masses, because they're the ones that really do need to be convinced, firstly, that this is a good system for them. Because I think the middle classes will accept this a lot easier, because they will see that everybody is going to be benefiting and that their tax money isn't going to be squandered on sports cars and fancy houses. So I'm spending my time right now talking to tribal leaders and local leaders, especially amongst the Zulu community at the moment, and then to move into other parts of South Africa, to educate them, to teach them about the system, and to help them to understand that this is a much better system of governance, whereby they will be able to use their own skills to their own benefit. They'll all be able to have land and homes, or whatever the case may be, and they'll be able to work for them and earn money, and no longer be treated like dogs with scraps that are being handed out to them by this ANC government. That we will be able to create enough work for everybody, by creating industry and by developing the economy. So that's pretty much what we're doing now, and we believe it is doable. Of course, it's doable, because it's almost nirvana. I mean, it's a perfect system of country management.
But as it's not a political party, how do you actually get the popular support to actually make it happen? Because the way the democracy works in South Africa is you set up a political party and you get people elected into parliament and they represent a block of people. How do you bring in a system which is totally different to that?
Well, from the political system of elections and governance and that kind of thing is concerned, it'll never work that way. Firstly, because we don't have the time. The next election is sometime next year, And quite frankly, no one believes that the economy can survive for another 6 months. It can't. It's broken down already. You know, the bankruptcy is going to really hit by the end of November. People are going to really start feeling that massive gap in the money that's just literally gone missing. And people who are wealthy, middle-class people are going to be bankrupt. They're going to have nothing. So, I mean, now things still look marginally okay, but because there's so much money missing, it's going to catch up. It has to catch up. That's the way finance works. So by the end of November, there's really going to be nothing left, or very little left, and it's going to destroy everything. So we don't have 6 months to wait for the next election. So this can't work in that way. So, and also because we're not a political party, we're not willing to register ourselves as a political party so as to win an election, because that is not the way to go. And there are too many anomalies. You know, there are too many things that can go wrong for that to happen, and we can't afford to waste that amount of time. So the only way to do this is simply to remove the current governance and to replace them.
Okay, I just don't see how that's going to work right across the country, because you're talking about a completely different form of democracy. It's foreign to anybody's understanding. I'm actually thinking that what you have to first reach is a country like Zimbabwe, which is in complete chaos. You know, so everything is broken down. People are starving. They're desperate to find a solution. I could see something like this perhaps working there, but again, it's how do you actually get that position of authority to establish this? Even in Zimbabwe, you'd have the army who would be saying, no, we're not going to let you do this because we're looting the country. I just don't see how you transition from the current political system in South Africa to this. This is... Explain to me, how you're going to do that.
Yeah. Well, look, it's interesting that you're talking about Zimbabwe, because we are talking to a group of people, Zimbabweans, who are looking at initiating the unity group system within that country. So we are talking to them, and they are planning to do it in a fairly revolutionary way in Zimbabwe. The only way that this can be done is to get buy-in from the powers the powers that, you know, that are there. You know, so we need to get buy-in from the army. We need to get buy-in from the police. So that is a given. So we have to get buy-in from them. The other thing that you do need to remember is that the leadership of this country are treasonous. You know, they've committed treason against this country.
They have,
and they, you know, we have a mandate to arrest them, basically, and they need to be arrested and they need to be taken out of the picture altogether. So that is possibly, and I'm not saying that is possibly partly what we're talking about, but not necessarily. So I don't want to make that statement categorically at the moment. However, these are people that are criminals. You understand? They have sold the country out. They've committed treason against the country. And for that reason, we would be legally justified to even you know, arrest them as citizens. You know, we can do a citizen's arrest on them, for example, and we would be legally justified to do that. To do it would be a slightly more tricky thing. So, because obviously these guys are well protected, and whatever the case may be, and they're hiding behind their thugs. So it's a different scenario. But I prefer not to go into too much of that detail. However, this is the direction we're working in.
Right. Look, I can understand Zimbabwe being a more potential, because, you know, they've reached rock bottom. And if you were able to establish this in Zimbabwe as a working model, and it just turned the country around, I think then South Africa would be a given, because South Africa by then would be in a complete shambles. But
no, we don't have time for that. No, we don't want to risk that. You know, the poor communities in South Africa, the poor class, the people who really are below the working class, are starving right now.
Yeah, it's awful. It's absolutely awful what's happening there. It's shocking.
Die, you know, we can't afford to let our people die. This is for them.
Yeah.
You know, we are doing this for them. This isn't for the middle classes. You know, the middle classes will survive somehow, but those people are dying right now as we're talking. You know, so we are doing this largely for them. We have to save our people at the end of the day, and it's all people. It's all South Africans matter. This isn't just about the wealthy few. This is about those people who really literally have nothing.
I get it.
Yeah,
I get it.
So we can't, Scott. We can't afford to wait. We can't afford to create models and things like that. It can't work. We have to do this thing fairly quickly.
Yeah, well, the problem I see, and I'm just being, again, the devil's advocate here, the problem I see is that you've got to educate 50 million people about how the system works before you can do it, because they're not going to just say, yeah, okay, we'll go with this new thing and let's see if it works. How are you going to actually educate people about government for the people, by the people?
Well, I'm doing it literally on the ground. So at the moment, I've met with some tribal leaders last week, and they're calling for all of the tribal leaders to come together, of the Zulu tribal leaders, to come together in one place, that I'll be able to speak to all of them in one go. And that would account for probably close to 20 million people. That's their influence. So they influence about 20 million people directly, these leaders. So if that meeting does come off, and I can have that meeting, and they are as convinced as the leaders I spoke to last week, then we've got very good traction. And the rest really is history. We'll be able to pull it together very quickly. So there are a lot of details that obviously I can't give you, Scott, and I need you to understand that.
Right.
But there are a lot of things that I can tell you, and that is that getting people to understand the system of governance is not going to be as difficult as you think. There's another chap in South Africa talking about a system of direct elections, and that is very, very similar to this type of system that we're talking about. So so people are already thinking about it. They're already talking about it.
Right. Okay. Now, under the unity group, or the concept that you've worked on, you would have a chief executive officer, like you have in a company. You'd have a chief financial officer, and you'd have a board of directors who answer to the people. So it's like they're answering to the shareholders. How would those people be voted in or out if people aren't happy with their performance?
Well, people could call for a vote. So if people saw that this wasn't working with a particular member of the board of directors, whatever the case may be, if people saw that this wasn't working, they could call for a vote. And we're looking to set up a voting system on a smartphone, so everybody will be able to do all of the voting on a smartphone. So polling stations would no longer exist. So there'd be none of that. You'd be able to vote with with a number that you have, or whatever the case may be, or your fingerprint, on this particular app. So that would be the way of working it. And that app would also allow you to call for a vote if people were dissatisfied. So we would do polls on a regular basis. Are you satisfied with the performance? Aren't you satisfied? Should we replace this person? Can this person continue? That type of thing.
All right, but it still comes to the point where you've got to replace that person. How are you going to have like let's say 5 potential applicants, all their information available to the whole nation, so they can vote for one of the 5?
Absolutely, that's exactly the system that we're looking at bringing into place. So people would be able to put forward a CV as they would, looking for any position in a company. They'd be able to put forward their CVs, and then those would be shortlisted. We'd have a panel who would shortlist, and that would be a cross-section of people right across the country who would form that panel, would shortlist it, say, to perhaps 10, and then those 10 people with their skills and abilities would be put to the population, who would then be able to vote on which one they choose.
Right. Okay. It's I just see so many areas that are going to be really hard to work under this concept. I love the idea. I have to tell you, I love the idea. I think
Sure.
it would work, but implementing it, I see a huge challenge for you.
Yeah. No, look, I mean, of course there is a huge challenge. I mean, we're not thinking that this is going to be necessarily a walk in the park. We're going to have to work at it, and that's understandable, but we need to make an attempt to do things better,
Yeah.
So, and there's no point in just accepting the status quo as it is, because it's not helping.
Yeah.
So we have to work at making it better, and just because it's difficult doesn't mean we shouldn't be doing it,
Well, let's face it,
So-
anything's better than the Chinese option.
I think it might be tricky, but I don't think it's going to be difficult.
Yeah.
And to be fair, it's a reasonably simple system. It's just that the implementation of it might be a little bit tricky to start with, just to get people's heads around it. But the system itself is a very, very straightforward, simple system.
Okay. Now, the whole idea is that the leaders are not political animals, they're actual specialists. They've got expertise in the area they're involved in. Can you explain that to us? So it's a totally different concept to what the ANC have. You've got idiots running portfolios. They have no idea what they're doing.
Well, look, I mean, I remember years ago hearing Seretse Khama saying to my father, he said to me, a country is a business, and I will run Botswana as a successful business. And he did. So Botswana is a successful business. It still is.
Right.
It's probably one of the success stories of Africa. It's run very, very successfully, and it's run profitably. They don't owe money to anybody.
Isn't it run by the Oppenheimers?
No, not at all. No. I mean, the De Beers had some influence in the mining and that kind of thing, but it's certainly not run by them at all. No. But I mean, there has been influence, of course, in the past, pre-Karma past, and yeah. But anyway, besides that, that is the way Botswana has been run. It's been run very, very
Right.
profitably, and South Africa can be run profitably as well. But as you say, it needs specialists to do it. So there's no point in getting a politician who is not schooled in economics and in business and in finance to run a country. They have no idea how to do that. They're schooled in economics. They're schooled in politics, not in economics. And so this is where things are falling down, especially in Africa, because you have you have a greyhound trying to run a horse race, and it doesn't work. And what we are saying is get specialists in, get people who are schooled in running and have experience in running successful companies to run the business and to head up the various departments within the board of directors. So you have specialists in sport, you have specialists in health, you have specialists in mining, in industry, who are part of that team. So this isn't just politicians who've gone to school to learn how to lie. This is people who have expertise and who have experience
And integrity.
And integrity, of course.
Well, I'm really interested in your that particular point, and I'll tell you why. If you look at the NCCC in South Africa, which are basically running the country under Dlamini Zuma, the people who are actually making the decisions are being ignored when it comes to the coronavirus. They've got a special team of experts and professors and who are in the health industry, and they're complaining that the NCCC is not taking their advice. So what you've got is a group of people who haven't got a clue, making decisions completely in the face of what they're being advised to do by the specialists who've been brought in there to try and guide them. So they're ignoring them. Now, what your system does is it takes the politician out, and the people vote for that specialist who is going to take on that portfolio, and he will then have the expertise within himself to be able to make a valued decision. Where right now with the ANC, you've got basically the kids in the room running the school.
Yeah, exactly.
So
exactly. And that is the system we are looking at implementing. We have the specialists and the professionals running it, and and as you say, you don't have the school children running it. You have you have the teachers in school. Yeah.
Okay. Now, under the unity group concept, all citizens would become shareholders in what would then become a business. And when you look at the New World Order, this is not very different to what the New World Order are proposing. And you raised the point that South Africa is actually registered as a company in or on Wall Street. And I've heard this from so many people, I don't doubt that's the case. And apparently every single person in South Africa and in Australia and in the UK, wherever you are basically like one of the shares on the, if we can use it that way. So you're not a person. You're seen as like
your property.
A property, yeah, like an asset.
Yeah, that's it. And you know, that is obviously what the birth certificate is all about, and all that registration, the ID number that people have. That is your registration as property of the corporation. So you are owned by the South Africa Corporation. Now, what we aim to do different is to do away with that altogether. So that system of ownership will be done away with completely. Every single person in South Africa will be a free human being and not be a part of the corporation. However, the business model, the company model that we intend to set up allows for every member of that country, whoever is living in that country, to share in the wealth of the country. So everybody's entitled to share in the wealth of the country. That is the difference. So in terms of the shareholding, your shareholding is in terms of how much you're contributing to the model. So if you are paying VAT, if VAT is needed, if you are paying a goods or services tax, if that is needed, that would make you a shareholder because you're a contributor.
Right.
So if you're contributing, and everybody will be contributing, then you will be entitled to get a return on your contribution. So tax will no longer be an expense. Tax will now become a contribution and will become an investment. So instead of paying money over that you'll never get a return on, you'll be paying money over that you will get a dividend back on. So that's the difference, really.
Right. Okay. Now, I just want to touch on the subject here because people in the side chat might not be aware of this, but deception is the key card played by the New World Order, and we're talking about this mystical group of people who are ultra wealthy, who are determined to control and own the world. And most people do not realize that their countries have actually been they're actually a company registered in Wall Street. And who actually owns all these countries? I mean, is there an owner? Who's a shareholder? Who actually owns all these countries?
Scott, I don't really want to get into that because it would be my personal opinion, and I don't think that it's fair to share that.
Do you think it's like the Rothschilds and the Queen of England and these sort of groups that they talk about?
You see, Scott, a lot of these things are theories at the moment. Until we can prove them, I don't think we have the authority to mention them as authoritatively as we would like to. I think you and I probably both have our own personal beliefs on that, and for now, that'll have to stay that way for me until such a time as I can prove it. So I mean, we've seen certain entities have massive investments in practically every single country in the world. We see that there are only, I think, 1 or 2 countries in the world that are not members of the World Bank. So I think people can draw their own conclusions. I don't think we really need to put the words in their mouths. I think people can see for themselves where this thing is going and who is pulling the strings.
I think what's happening with this COVID-19 and how it's impacting everybody right now, when you consider that it is really no worse than a bad flu, but the deception that came out at the beginning that 4% of people would die from it, where it's now about 0.2%, which is about 1/20th of what they suggested, and it was on that basis they had the lockdown. The deception is extraordinary when you're involved with these guys behind the scenes. So who knows? Okay, let's get back to the Unity Group. Let's talk about taxation. What happens to taxation under your model?
Initially, we want to phase out income tax altogether. So that we feel that income tax is not necessary. We feel that if there are taxes on goods and services and high taxes on imported completed goods, that would be sufficient money to have a a free health system, a very good free health system, and a very good free system of education, right to doctorate level. So we feel that we would be able to do a lot of things with that amount of money. We don't believe that income tax is really necessary. So we would do away with income tax, phasing it out, obviously, but do away with income tax as quickly as possible, build industry as quickly as possible as well. And you know, the model that we're working towards is to hopefully within 5 to 10 years have an extra 20 million jobs created basically through industry, and through spending our way out of this global collapse, or the collapse of our economy. Taxation has always been a manipulative tool, and we don't want to use it in that way at all. Taxation, again, as I've said previously, is going to be an investment in the economy, and as time goes by, people will receive all of that tax money back through dividends and through shares in the company, or the company model. So, yeah.
Well, I have to tell you, there's one little town in KwaZulu-Natal. It's called Greytown. It's up in the northern part of KZN. And my mother, back in the 1970s, was the mayor's PA. And because the councillors, many years before, had the foresight to use the council land to put under forestry, under pine, the council itself would obviously harvest the timber, and the rates paid by people in Greytown were incredibly low because of the income they got from the forestry. So I can see what you're talking about here. You basically have like a community. It's all working together. And there's a guy, oh gosh, I can't think of his name right now, but he's come up with this concept of the one town, where everybody in the town, they work as almost like a business just in that town. I should put you in touch with him, because it's very similar to what you're talking about, but at a municipal level. I'll get his name. I know the guy well. Michael. Yes, Michael. There you are. That's it. Yeah. A nice guy. Okay, now one of your other points that you're looking at here is obviously the privatization of all state-owned enterprises. Now, would that mean that they would then not be privatized to a third party overseas, but would then become an asset within the actual company itself?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, companies like Eskom, the power corporation here in South Africa, has a monopoly. So we, unlike Europe, or I guess in Australia, various other countries, United States, you can buy your power from a number of different companies. There isn't this monopoly that we have in South Africa.
Right.
So we want to open this up and get rid of the monopolies like that. So it's about opening business up and creating a free a free, fair market economy, which at the moment we don't have in South Africa. There are too many of these companies that control. Like the DSTV, with the satellite television, is controlled by one company. The mobile phone companies, cellular networks are very controlled. They charge very high rates for their services. So things like that are, there needs to be a lot more fairness in business as well, and that isn't evident in South Africa, because the competition has been taken away. And so this is about opening up the economy and creating more fair competition for the economy.
Right. Now, are you working with other groups going forward? Are there any other groups that you have in mind? South Africa.
Can you clarify what type of groups you're referring to?
Like, let's say a group that might have a similar type of goal as yourself. I don't know who they would be, but are there other groups that you're looking at working with?
Look, I've had conversations. You were talking earlier about people being an owned entity. So there is a chap in Canada who has been looking at this. He's a legal mind who's been looking at the straw man, I think he was talking about, and about how people can become free entities and not being owned by the corporation, being owned by the state. And that particular organization, I don't want to mention their name just yet because we haven't really tied up with that relationship just yet. But we're looking at working with them, and I'm working with a man, a very successful businessman in South Africa called Abi Mkhize. We're working together, and there are various others, and we've got quite a number of the Facebook groups and that have joined up with us. Because we are doing this in a very unemotional way, and we're doing it very logically and very carefully and planning it very well, we are distancing ourselves from a lot of organizations who are riding the emotional wave, because that's not what we're doing. We have a very carefully planned out agenda and plan on how to implement what we plan to do. So we're staying away from a lot of hype and noise. So if there are organizations like that, we're distancing ourselves from them for now. But I do imagine, being the unity group, the idea is obviously to unify everybody. We will, going forward, unify with absolutely everybody who is out there. And that's the intention. That is the ultimate goal.
Right. I get that. I just see your big stumbling blocks are getting your message out there. I think that's your biggest problem, is actually telling or educating people as to your concept so that they can either accept it or reject it. I think that's a huge challenge you have.
Sure. But, just because it's a huge challenge, it doesn't mean that it's not achievable.
I get what you're saying. Yeah. Okay, look, is there anything else you'd like to raise that I might not have covered?
Well, I think just in terms of going forward, what we're doing, we've covered a little bit about that. We're going out into rural areas now. I'm going out personally into rural areas, meeting rural people, meeting people in the townships, talking to people, gaining support amongst the masses, which is really where we need to gain support. Helping them to understand that they have been enslaved by this political system. They've been enslaved by this government. That if they continue to keep this going, it's going to completely destroy them. I'm helping them to understand that there is an agenda from China, that China's purpose is to destroy them as well. So from that point of view, we are gaining a foothold. We are getting momentum going there, and I'm pleased to say that the people do trust me, and I believe I'm trustworthy, and they are trusting me, and that's a great blessing. It's a great benefit to be able to get the message out. So that is in place. Going forward, we've got a lot that we're doing. I'm holding meetings all the time. Tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, I'm in Pietermaritzburg for a meeting with some of our members. Later on in the afternoon, and probably for the rest of the weekend, I'm meeting with quite a large group of people who are living in communities across South Africa, and people who are interested in living this way. And I'm having these meetings as a backstop in case things do go pear-shaped before we've had a chance to correct them. And people need to get out of cities fast and need to get into communities very quickly. So I'm busy setting up networks like that. We currently run 21 Facebook groups for different parts of the world, different provinces in South Africa, different areas of interest. We run about 85 Telegram groups, which is that telephone app that we run for different areas of the country, for different industries in the country. So we're very, very active, and we're very, very involved right across the country on multiple levels. So the Unity Group is not just a Facebook group. We're a splinter group of In the Lockdown Mzansi, which is our main group, which has about 125,000 members on it. But we're a group from them. So the Unity Group SA is our Facebook page, but # In the Lockdown Mzansi is our main page. And then obviously our website is the unitygroup.co.za. So we're very, very busy. This has become a full-time job for me. This is all I do, and I literally do it all day and sometimes very late into the night.
Yeah.
So it has completely taken over my life. So we are working tirelessly to create a country that will be safe for all South Africans to live in, and for all South Africans who have left the country to come back to as well, if they so choose. And we want to create an environment where we can actually almost finance them to come back, because we want our citizens together. You know, we're South African, and I know I've lived in 7 different countries all over the world, and I've never felt more at home than I have in South Africa, regardless of all the troubles. So this is where we're going, you know. And over and above that, I mean, we need support. We need help from South Africans all over the world. You know, we're busy building a new country, and that we need support in that. We need help. I mean, we need physical help. Of course, we obviously need financial help. You know, we've got people that need to be paid on the ground to do various things. You know, there's a lot of expense in doing something like this as well. So.
I was actually just about to raise the funding issue. We've actually got in the description below this video the link to your GoFundMe. That's actually there. So if anyone watching wants to support the Unity group, please go to that GoFundMe and make your contribution there. Okay, so you must feel like you've got a huge target on your back, because as you go out there and you start talking to these chiefs and people like that, the ANC are not going to be very happy with you. And, you know, the ANC being a gangster state, if your project takes traction or gets traction, you're going to have a body of people sort of guarding you.
Do you want an answer?
Yeah, I'm waiting to see what you have to say about that.
Scott, I'm not really thinking about that. I'm not too concerned about that. I mean, I don't have any fear of that, and I don't think anything's going to happen to me. You know, I don't want to say these guys are disorganized, because I don't want to, I don't want to jinx myself. But to tell you the truth, I'm still acting well within my rights. I haven't broken any laws. And we haven't broken any laws yet. So that's just the way it is. Once I have broken laws, then they would be free to arrest me. But we haven't yet.
Okay, now I've got a couple of questions that people have asked from the side chat. Bruce Basters has asked, please ask Michael, he mentioned getting South Africa right and then uniting with other countries. Which countries does he want to unite with?
Well, I think to start off with, we need to sort South Africa out, and that's going to take a bit of time. But ultimately, Africa is a gold mine. You know, Africa has got resources. Africa has got so many strengths. There's just so much to Africa, and there's so much to rescue. There's so much to help. You know, and the African people have been abused since the beginning of time. You know, and I would like to see an Africa where the African people can live truly free. Now, South Africa first, and building South Africa first, but then ultimately incorporating countries like Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Namibia, you know, countries like that going forward. And I feel that the time would be right for it, because right now they are just going to be even more abused than they've ever been abused before by the Chinese. You know, they're just walking into a death trap at the moment, you know. So that's the short answer. I think just to rescue Africa ultimately from the clutches of people like China, countries like China.
Right. Now, Lars Benson has asked, will the South African Reserve Bank get closed, do you think?
I hope so. I think going forward, perhaps in the short term not, but I think in the long term yes, because part of the ownership structure is World Bank, Reserve Bank, State Bank. And so I think ultimately that would be the way to go. And we have been having conversations with a number of financiers who are recommending various routes to take in that direction. I don't personally know enough about it to comment intelligently on it, but I believe that would make sense, to extricate ourselves completely from the South Africa Corporation ownership structure.
Right. Okay, now Neville has clarified something, and thanks, Neville. This is actually Neville. He says Michael Tellinger is a guy you had on the channel. Now Michael Tellinger is a very interesting man. Have you met Michael? Or
I
you heard
haven't,
of it?
no, but I've done my research on him. I know what he believes.
Okay, because he's working with a few towns, I believe, right now, building a concept very similar to what you're talking about, but it's basically just within a little town. It's not obviously the whole country. If you're interested, I can put you in touch with him. I'm just making the offer.
I think I would like that, because I've been waiting for that introduction to come across my path. I didn't want to approach him myself, but if you feel that it would be, it would be good for us to meet, I'd like that.
I think you'd find it useful, because he could probably nut out some of the practical issues you would be facing, from his experience. Because I think he's a bit further down the track from a much smaller level. So yeah, look, I'll send you his email, and that's one of the things we do on this channel. We do a lot of networking for people, putting different people in touch with each other.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't see any further questions. Have I missed any questions, moderators? If you could just paste them now so I can put them to Michael. Michael, while we're waiting for that, is there a message you would like to convey to people watching the video now or who might watch it later about the Unity group?
I think I'd like to convey a message more about South Africa. Obviously the Unity group too, but more about South Africa. South Africa is a really unique country. It stands out in the world, and people who live in different countries, you may well think that they say the same thing about their country, but there's something very unique about South Africa, and South Africans know it, and South Africans feel it, and South Africa has a future, and South Africa has a future to heal and to help a lot of people, not just South Africans, but people outside of this country as well. There's a darkness that's coming across the earth right now in the form of a new world order, or whatever you want to call it. And there's going to be a place where people can escape to. And I believe South Africa is going to be that place. And the Unity group is busy creating that place. It's busy creating a place of safety. It's busy creating a haven for people to be able to escape to, where they will be safe and where they will be protected. And that's what we are creating here as the Unity group in this great country of South Africa.
Right. Now, Fiona Timms has posted a very interesting comment. She says, is Michael from the Southwoods who went to Michael House and have a fishing cottage on Lyndhurst, the lake owned by the late Neil Ross? Neil was my dad. Are you from that family?
But I believe we are cousins.
Okay.
I believe we are cousins.
Okay, so you didn't go to Michael House?
I did not, no.
Okay. I actually went to Michael House. That's why I think that's been raised. All right.
I did go to boarding school, but it wasn't quite as nice as Michael House.
Yeah, well, Michael House wasn't nice. I got caned a lot at Michael House, and that's my that's my memory of the school.
You all got caned a lot, believe me.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I just want to thank the moderators for the sterling work you guys do in the side chat as usual. Thanks, guys, and for everybody who's been watching, thank you for joining us. I found this discussion very interesting, and the Unity group will be something to watch to see how it goes, because clearly what is being proposed would be 1,000,000% better than an ANC government that we have at the moment. But obviously the implementation is going to be the huge challenge that Michael and his team will face. But having said that, Michael, if you have something happening and you'd like to get it out there on the internet, we have a huge audience through our channel. Please just contact Marlena and tell us what it is, and we'll get you back to talk about that. And the other thing is that with this discussion we've had tonight, I think it's been quite enlightening about your views on a number of things, and obviously the Unity group. I'll send you a link in a couple of minutes. which will be this live stream, and feel free to put that on your Facebook pages, to put it out to friends, wherever, so they can come and listen to what we discussed.
Great.
Okay.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you so much for your time, and thank you for having me on your show.
It's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you once again for joining us tonight. All right, guys, I'm going to shut down the live stream now. Please take care, have a good evening, and don't forget, tomorrow night at 8 p.m, we have 3 amazing singers in a jamming session. And I've actually been listening to some of the music of 2 of the singers, Henk and Ria. They've actually sent me pre-recorded songs, and wow, these guys are good. And we'll have our resident musician, Winston Kutsia, joining us tomorrow night at 8. And of course Peter will be joining us as well. So we'll have a bevy of singers. They'll all be there live with us so we can chat to them, and it's just a nice good old jamming session. And of course between each song we'll have the traditional trivia questions, where we'll ask you questions about what happened in the last week in South Africa. Alright guys, with that I'm going to shut down the broadcast. Please take care, and as I said before, and have a great evening.